All right, for you people at home, this is a review from day 2. If you were here on day 2, you know what you're doing. If not, go back and watch day 2. So the radioactive activity breaks down at a certain rate over time. So the easiest way to set this up for me is to do like a T-chart. So at Chernobyl, when the accident happened, it released a certain amount of cesium into the environment. And so we're going to call that 0 years when it happened. And there's 100% of cesium that's released into the environment. Now you could, let's say you knew how much it was. You could say like 100 pounds. It doesn't matter. Okay. So, but we know that whatever's released, there's 100% of it released into the environment. Okay. Now, after 30 years, how much cesium do we have left? 50%. Or half. Okay. And after another 30 years, how much do we have left? 25%. Good. What's half of 50? 25%. So it's not like half of it decays, then the other half decays. It's half of whatever's left over. So each time it's half of the amount that's there. Okay? Decays. So this is like the known rate of decay or breakdown, and this is how they get all that data. If you ever hear anything about like how old a fossil is or how old a rock is, they're using isotopes of different elements found in those rocks, and they look at how much of the radioactive material is left in them. Okay? So in another 30 years, how much is broken down? What are we left with?
12.5.
We got about 12.5%. Or 1/4. Excuse me, I've already messed up here. There's 1/4, there's 1/8. Okay, so how long did it take for us for 7/8 of that radioactive material to decay or break down? 90 years, Jason, yes.
No, but you said 7/8.
7/8. So if we've got 1/8 left, that means 7/8 of that material broke down.
I thought you said that 12.5 was 1/4.
No, I did, and I messed it up, my bad. So yeah, so once we get to this point, 7/8 of that material has decayed, and we're only left with about 1/8 of that radioactive material. Does that make sense? So, and you can continue going from there. Now, an interesting point for the Chernobyl video is it's been about 34 years since the Chernobyl accident happened, and which means it's been over 30, almost 35. Which means how much of that radioactive cesium that was originally released is still in the environment?
40-something.
It's radioactive, a little bit less than 50, somewhere in the 40% range. Now, the problem, Jordan, is that Chernobyl continues to release radioactive material. And so I don't know who knows how much is left. Of course, some of it gets blown away by the wind and washed away by the rain, but in terms of that original amount, that's how much would still be radioactive wherever it is. Okay. All right. Any questions about radioactive material or half-lives and radioactive dating?
Although radioactive material still be present from like the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombs, or is that gone?
I think probably the same applies. I'm sure there's some radiation left in that area. But I would also assume that a lot of it gets like blown away by wind, and I mean, there's still probably some in the soil, I would think. But in terms of just hanging around the air, I wouldn't expect you to find a lot. Just because even if that radioactive material hasn't broken down, it's probably been washed away or worn away by wind and rain, and probably out at sea. Because I think most of those are port cities. So if I were to guess, there's probably not a lot left in those areas. Be good extra credit to look at. All right, I got one more question for you here. Let's say that you have radioactive element X, and its half-life is 40 years. Okay. How long will it take for 100% of it? We start out with. How much of it will be left after 200 years? How much of that radioactive material will be left after 200 years? Figure that out. Don't yell at the answer. Do what?
You said 120 years?
200. Mm-hmm. What you got, Jason?
3.125.
So 3.125%?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, so after 40 years, we expect there to be 1/2 left for 50%. And then another 40, 1/4 or 25%. And another 40, let's go 40, 40, and we went one more. So 1/8, 1/16, 1/32. So after 200 years, radioactive element X, we'd expect there only to be about 3.13% left of that radioactive material. So it breaks down pretty quickly. It's kind of like cesium. And so really you lose a lot of that radioactivity pretty quick there in that. That's, I think, one of the questions, or similar to one of the questions that's on one of the AP exams we've had previously. So if you know what radioactivity is and you know what half-lives are, then you should be able to figure that out and not have a problem. All right, let's look in your book on page 354. Dun, 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 dun. All right, so we're going to go over hydroelectric today, and we got FRQ, and then that's probably all we'll have time for today. Like I said, don't forget about your AP classroom quiz. Let's do it Monday at 8 a.m. All right. Before we get into hydroelectric, a couple things I want to talk about with biomass that was maybe not mentioned. Let's read figure 1311 at the top of 354. Trent, read that for us.
The bus fueled by vegetable oil. This converted school bus is fueled mostly by waste vegetable oil. Students from Dartmouth College drove and maintained the bus as part of a program to educate people around the United States about renewable fuels and energy conservation.
Yeah, I don't know what weirdo named this it's pronounced Dartmouth College. It's one of the Ivy League schools, and it does look like Dartmouth. I don't know. It sounds very strange. Anyway, who knew that you could put cooked vegetable oil in diesel engines? Okay, only Colby? Good. We actually had I don't think it's still there, but I'm not sure. Y'all can check and see. There used to be a biodiesel plant down toward Mountville on the right before Cherokee, or around Cherokee Bend, that close to that neighborhood. There was an industrial plant. You know what I'm talking about, Jordan? Is it still there? I don't think they're still producing. I actually went and toured the plant one day. I was going to use it for a field trip, and the guy who took me through the plant, I mean, like, it was over my head the whole time. And he's like, "Do you think your kids get anything out of this?" And I was like, I'll have to think about it because I don't know if they can understand it, since I have no idea what you're talking about. He was really like over the top, but maybe it's just my idiocracy. But the gist of it is, you can take burnt cooking oil from restaurants, is what they were doing, and they were running it through this refinery. They'd actually retrofitted that refinery. It was used for something else, and they were basically cleaning it up and selling it as biodiesel. And so you could use it in really any kind of diesel engine, like trains or cars or trucks or whatever. And so in recycling that, and basically they were getting all the cooking oil free from different places around town, because everybody has to pay to usually get rid of their cooking oil once it's finished and once they're done cooking with it. So I wanted to bring that up because we talked about ethanol, and we have an option for replacing gasoline potentially with ethanol, although I think there's better options than corn, hopefully, in the future. We also have options for using oils like that to produce different biodiesel. I know kind of y'all seen Back to the Future which one is it, where he starts just throwing all his trash in there and he uses it to fly off? Y'all remember that? The second one? Yeah. That kind of reminds me of it. It's just using all these organic waste products to fuel his little engine there. So anyway, that's one thing. And then the other thing, the guy mentioned in the video yesterday for the solar energy and nuclear that he was talking about, he mentioned that a lot of people kind of transition from wood and biofuels, and they move more toward more energy dense fuels like natural gas and uranium. And one of the ones he mentioned that poor people use is, and we talked about this on Tuesday, is dung. What is dung, Andrew? Poop. Who uses poop to cook with? Yeah, there's people in India who, did I tell you about this? They make the little patties. Did I show you some of these? So, yeah, they make these little like round, I guess y'all didn't watch the video though. They make these little, they almost look like pancakes. They're kind of flat and about that big around, and they kind of pat them out when they're pliable. So once they come out of the cow, and then they stack them up. They'll make these little stacks and make big kind of stacks of them so they can have little air pockets to air out. And once they air dry, then they'll use them to cook with. They'll like burn them just like you would burn like some sticks for firewood. And they got 700, 800 million cows running around, so there's plenty of cow poop. And so they'll use that to cook a lot in their homes. The drawback of any of those fuels like that, wood or dung, is they have a ton of respiratory issues. And that's another issue you brought up with air pollution. Kills the estimate 7 million people a year. And so a lot of that comes from like cars burning stuff, people burning stuff in their homes, asthma related illnesses, could be smoke causing cancer. A number of different illnesses caused by air pollution cause respiratory problems. So
cows were sacred to Hindu people.
I know, but burning the dung is not sacred. They are sacred. That's why there's so many of them. But you can still use the poo. They use the poo. I've seen them like bottle the pee for stuff.
I think they're like moms are coming back as cows or something.
Yeah, we're not gonna get into that. But I watched this one travel show. It was really funny. Y'all, it's probably not appropriate for you guys. An Idiot Abroad. It used to be on Netflix, and this guy went to India, and he went in one of these places where they sold all of these cow products, and it was like cow dung and cow pee, and it had a variety of supposed uses that I don't know that we have scientific evidence for. Yes, sir.
I heard that in a country that they take like either dog or human poop, and they put it in a like confine it into underground, something like that, and then use it and turn it into like a remedy called alcohol poop.
I would not doubt that, Donovan. I do not want any kind of human or dog poop for consumption, though, or to rub on me anywhere else. Anyway, let's move on. Hydroelectric. We went down the wrong rabbit hole there. 355. How does hydroelectric power work? Y'all probably can. This shouldn't be too difficult for y'all because this isn't much of a derivation from what we've already talked about, except you don't have heat. You just have the power of water. And 38. Hydroelectric power can be, well, it is clean and renewable if the renewable is only dependent upon what? The sun's shining, you got rain coming down, right? So for us, we really don't think like we're going to have water in our rivers and streams and dams, and we can use hydroelectric, and it should be very renewable for us. It's more of a problem if you're living in like California where you have drought conditions, and a lot of people are pulling water out for irrigation and residential issues and other things, and water's running really low. So in terms of pollutants, though, hydroelectric doesn't release any CO2, and there's no air pollutants. So it is beneficial. It is clean in that way, okay? Dams built across rivers collect what? What is the purpose of the dam here? What? Yeah, to collect water. What do we call the place where it collects water? Reservoir. So in Alabama, we have if you look at a map, there's a bunch of lakes all over the place. Those aren't really technically lakes. I mean, you can call it a lake. It's a body of water, pretty big body of water. But they're more specifically what? Reservoirs. I don't know that, and y'all can look this up out there, you in internet land. I don't know. We may have one or two, but if so, there's very few natural lakes in the state of Alabama. I mean, hardly any. If I can't think of any, because most every body of water that's called a lake is a dammed up reservoir. And if you remove that reservoir, it would be whatever that lake was would be a river or stream. So anyhow. Now, if you look at the power plant here, the moving water can be used to spin what? So if you look at the intake, the water moves through, it turns a turbine, which turns an electric generator, and then the water comes out the other side. Here's a good question. On this picture on 355, why is that intake at the very bottom there instead of toward the top where the water can run down this way into the turbine? Why is it just running across sideways? Bella, you want to answer this one? You think about it for a second. I need a drink. You got it? Why is it at the bottom? Colby?
Is that because that's where all the pressure is?
Very good, Jeremiah. Now, so typically when you want to make hydroelectric, you want to have as much of an elevation difference as you can in your dam. So the higher your dam is, the more pressure it's going to create, because basically what's happening behind the dam here is, just like if you go swimming in a swimming pool, DeQuinte, wake up, you're missing important plot points about swimming. So if you go down in a swimming pool, your ears pop, you got all that pressure. Well, just think about, let's say you have a dam that goes down 200 or 300 feet. That's a ton of pressure, right? So when they open those intakes at the bottom of that dam, that water is going to be pushing through there really, really fast. The more pressure and the faster it's moving through, the more the turbines are going to turn and the more electricity you're going to make. So that's why the intake's there at the bottom. Yeah, Don?
Is that why, as you go deeper in the far out deep of the ocean, the deepest part of the ocean, the gravity pressure is?
Yeah, so the more water you got on top of you, the more pressure there is. And in the case of this lake, when you're talking about a dam, you want as much pressure and water coming through there as you can, because you're going to get more electricity out of it. So like in Tuscaloosa, we have a hydroelectric power plant. If you get a chance, with your parents' approval, or maybe they'll go with you, you can go over on the north side of town, out past, it's close to Deer Lake Park. There's a nice little park out there you can go visit. But you can drive out, and there's a big overlook by Holt Lock and Dam. I may have told you all this. There's like a little picnic area and some stuff, and you can see the dam, and you can see the locks where the boats and stuff come through there. It's a good place to go picnic with your girlfriend, Jason. And so you can see that hydroelectric facility. And you can also, if you want to contrast that, Andrew, before you fall asleep, you can go down to the south side of town. I can't think of the name of what that one is. You know the name of that, Colby? The dam on the south side of town. Y'all can see it from the bridge. Like if you're going downtown and you go over the river, if you look down river.
Turn left on Rice Mine, and then it's like a little park. I think I know what you're talking about. You go over the bridge after that.
Yeah, you go over the bridge. Actually, you go out there past toward Kentuck.
Yeah.
Before you get to Kentuck, you turn left and you can drive out to the dam. There's a little park out there. Or you can drive out, if you're on this side of town, it's out towards Stillman, and you take a right before you get to Stillman, or by Stillman, it veers off. And you can a lot of people go out there and catfish on the bottom side of the dam. That is just a dam that blocks up water. So, and you can tell there's very little elevation gains. So it wouldn't be a good candidate for hydroelectric, because the water wouldn't fall very much. So you wouldn't get much electricity out of it. In fact, when it was flooding a lot back a couple of years ago, the water was basically at the same level below the dam as it was above it. You could barely see where the spillway was, where the water was coming over. Anyway, so you need that drastic change in elevation. Now, we have some pretty big dams here in the U.S. Y'all probably all heard of the Hoover Dam. I know Seth was talking about it last period. He'd been there. It's pretty cool to see, just because it's so massively tall. I went to one that was, I think, bigger than that in Wyoming last year, a couple years ago. My family, we actually went through and took a tour of, which is pretty cool to see the inside of a dam. And you could see where the generators that were hooked on top of the turbines in this dam were probably like half the size of this room. I mean, they were that big. And so imagine like you have a big turbine and then this generator that's spinning inside there with all these magnetic coils around it is that large. And there were a bunch of them down through there. So anyway, that's how hydroelectric makes. Now, there is another type of hydroelectric. Before we get there, on number 40, small rivers. They actually make little small mini hydroelectric turbines and generators that you can put, like, let's say you had you lived in the mountains, Andrew, and you could put one of these in a stream by your house and run a power line from there to your home. You could use it to live off grid and probably power like some small lights and stuff. And it's just like a small little encasement and it has a fan in there. So as it turns a generator and generates a little bit of electricity. But it's one of those things where the faster the stream's flowing and the more water, the more you're going to get out of it. I've got a pretty small stream behind my house, and it's just like if a duck was floating, it would just be going like this slow. So I wouldn't get much power if I stuck a turbine in my stream. Anyway,
You do that with a creek?
if you had enough flow, yeah. The problem is, like in the summertime, it gets kind of hot and dry, and creeks go pretty slow. So you would have to have something with a consistent, pretty fast flow of water.
Because we have a creek in our backyard, but it's like, I feel like it goes pretty fast though.
You could, yeah. I mean, you could look that up online. I don't know how much those produce.
Sandy Creek maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know, it connects to like a bigger creek.
Where do you live? What neighborhood?
I don't live in
By the
neighborhood.
volunteer fire department.
Yeah.
Middle of nowhere. Behind like
By the volunteer fire department, you know what I'm talking
across from the Hillcrest Feed and Seed.
about? Who's that?
Oh, I know this.
Oh, yeah. That's, down the hill from that?
No, like if you were going on Old Greensboro.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Volunteer fire department.
Yeah, I was thinking, I don't know that creek. That probably does connect into Big Sandy though at some point. It would just all depend on like the fall and the flow of water. Because the more fall you have, the faster the water's going to flow, and the more water you have, the more it's going to power the turbine. So theoretically, like the apocalypse comes and you had one of those, you could use that to help generate power in your home. The apocalypse. Okay. You know what I'm talking about, Bella. So another type of hydroelectric is tidal power. Turn over to 343, please. What are the tides? High tide, low tide. What causes them? What causes the water to raise and low? Moon and the stars in the sky. No, just the moon. The moon's gravitational pull. Yes. 343. So there is a setup that they have built off the coast of New York City on what island is this? Roosevelt Island, off of the Roosevelt Island. The Tidal Energy Project, and it says it makes 37 megawatt hours a year. I don't know. I mean, a megawatt is 1,000,000 watts, but 35 of those, I don't know. I mean, I'd have to figure out how much that's making per day. I don't know if that's a significant amount. The good thing about tidal power is that the tides are always coming and going, like twice a day. It's coming in, it's coming out, and so the energy is there. The problem with having like stuff built in the ocean is what? Like, so these would be like, you could have like turbines possibly in the water that turn kind of like you see one on 343. Some I've seen are round and they like roll. So as water rolls in, it turns them over. And as it rolls out, it would turn them the other way. And each time it would generate electricity. What kind of logistical issues do you think you would wind up with? What? Okay, I mean, pollutants could get in there. What else? Maybe, yeah. It could be a problem with fish and aquatic life. What else? I was just thinking, like, what happens to metal components, yeah, in the water? So you would have to have some way of keeping that material safe and free from corrosion, which I would think would be a big issue. And then for us, having one of these setups off the coast would be a problem. What would be another problem? Periodically. If you had something built into the ocean floor. What? Hurricanes, yeah. I mean, like, what happens if you have a tropical storm? I mean, like, is it going to get covered up with sand? Is it going to get washed away? Most of our ocean bottoms are pretty sandy, so it's not like it's easy to drill into a rock and cement it in there, like in some places off the coast. So, DeQuinte, good job. That's what I was thinking. All right, so let's look at a couple more examples, and we'll get to our FRQ. On 243, let's back this thing up. The largest hydroelectric dam in the world. Read figure 9.10 for us, Bella. Read it really like theatrically, like you're in the spelling bee. Like you're Luke's character in the spelling bee.
You said 9.10?
You have the one at the top.
Okay, dams. Dams serve a wide variety of purposes, including flood control and electricity generation. The world's largest dam, the Three Gorges Dam on the Yangtze River in China, serves both purposes.
That wasn't theatrical enough for me. All right, so in China, let's see here. Hold on. I just read this. This is fascinating. On 242 at the bottom. In 2009, that's about how old this book is. I was 3 years old, Mr. McDonald. There were 845,000 dams in the world, 82,000 in the United States. I didn't realize we had that many dams. Anyway, that's a lot of dams. So, I don't know how many we have in Alabama, but I imagine it's quite a few. There's, I want to say, 9 pretty large dams up and down the Alabama River. What's the primary reason they dammed up the river out here? The Black Warrior and where it runs into Alabama? It wasn't for hydroelectric, I'll give you that much. What? No, they don't care that much about people. It happened in the late 1800s, early 1900s when they started building these. Why would they dam up the river?
Oh, to make it easier to like get across.
Yeah, to navigate. So for navigation purposes, and I think originally they had 13 dams built up and down the river, and they came in and replaced them with bigger locks and dams. Maybe later on we get to aquatic pollution. I've got a video actually on the Black Warrior River and the whole damming up of it and the process that went into it. Y'all can see one of the old locking dams. You know, if you walk down a river walk and they've got that big area that's kind of fenced off and you can overlook, that was one of the old part of one of the locks and one of the old dams. And before they dammed up the river there, you could walk, like in the fall when the water was down, you could walk from one side of the river to the other, like where Cypress Inn is. Like you could walk across the river. It'd be like walking across stones, but you could walk across there. Anyway, so in this case of hydroelectric purposes, the Chinese dammed up the Yangtze River. Now, the benefits. It's creating enough electricity to meet the needs of 11% of their population. Which in China, that would be like, what, 100 and something million people? That's a lot of electricity. It also, you know, in terms of air pollution is beneficial because it doesn't make air pollutants. And China is notorious for air pollution issues. So, those are the benefits. Now the problems. This may be the largest structure like ever built on Earth. I don't know. I want to feel like I've read that somewhere. This joker is 1.3 miles across. Now, that's probably like from here to, I don't know, CVS. Just imagine a dam that's that. I got to get out and measure my mileage here. That's a huge piece of concrete, basically. If you're a fan of engineering and building stuff, like you should watch some stuff on the Yangtze dam completion because it is fantastic. The thing is 600 feet high, so like 2 football fields high of concrete, and the reservoir that it backed up goes 400 miles. Now, the problem with that, Jordan, is there were a bunch of people that lived along this Yangtze River before it was dammed up. There were 140 towns, and 1,300 villages with 1.3 million people. And you know what happened to them, Jason? No, they didn't kill them all, although that's... Never mind. All right. No, they built a city for them. They basically like built a city, and they moved all these people into the city. But imagine who's living along this river. These are like mostly small little farms and villages, and people who have farmed all their life or fished, and then you stick them in a new city of 1.3 million other people who have never lived in a city like that. I can only imagine the difficulties that would pose. Anyway, the communist China does what communist China does. It is a feat of engineering, I'll give them that much. All right, clear off your desk and get out a blank sheet of paper and something to write with. Oh yeah, you need a calculator.